Kripa sindubhya eva cha patitanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavad-gita as it is, chapter 10, text 4. Buddhir Gyanam Asamoha Shama Satyam Dama Shamaha Sukham Dukham Bhava Bhavo Bhayam Cha Bhayam Eva Cha Ahimsa Samata Tushtish Tapodanam Yasho Yashaha Bhavanti Bhava Bhutanam Mata Eva Pratag Vida. Intelligence, knowledge, freedom from doubt and delusion, forgiveness, truthfulness, self-control and calmness, pleasure and pain, birth, death, fear, fearlessness, non-violence, equanimity, satisfaction, austerity, charity, fame, and infamy are created by me alone. Text 6. Maharshaya Sapta Purve Chatvaro Manavastata Madbhava Manasa Jata Yesham Loka Ima Prajaha. The 7 great sages, and before them the 4 other great sages, and the Manus, progenitors of mankind, are born out of my mind, and all creatures in these planets descend from them. Itam vibhutim yogam cha mama yoveti tatpataha so vikalpena yogena yujate natra samshayaha. He who knows in truth this glory and power of mine engages in unalloyed devotional service. Of this there is no doubt. Aham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvita. I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Everything emanates from me. The wise who know this perfectly engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. Makchita madgata prana bodhayanta parasparam katayantascha mam nityam tushyanti cha ramanti cha. The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are surrendered to me, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss enlightening one another and conversing about me. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam pritipurvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mam upayanti te. To those who are constantly devoted and worship me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. Tesham evanukampam partam aham agyanajam tamaha nasham yam yatma bhavasto jnana dipena bhasvata. Out of compassion for them, I dwelling in their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. Param Arjuna uvacha param brahma param dhamma pavitram paramam bhavan Purusham Shashvatam Divyam Adidevam Majam Vibhum Ahustvam Rishaya Sarve Devarshir Naradastata Asito Devalo Vyasa Swayam Shaiva Bravishime. Arjuna said, You are the supreme Brahman, the ultimate, the supreme abode and purifier, the absolute truth and the eternal divine person. You are the primal God, transcendental and original, and you are the unborn and all-pervading beauty. All the great sages such as Narada, Asita, Devala, and Vyasa proclaim this of you, and now you yourself are declaring it to me. So back to text 3. He who knows me as the unborn, as the beginningless, as the supreme Lord of all the worlds, he undiluted among men is freed from all sins. Purport by His Divine Grace, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. As stated in the 7th chapter, those who are trying to elevate themselves to the platform of spiritual realization are not ordinary men. They are superior to millions and millions of ordinary men who have no knowledge of spiritual realization. But out of those actually trying to understand their spiritual situation, one who can come to the understanding that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the proprietor of everything, the unborn stage supreme position, one can be free completely from all sinful reactions. Maharaj, would you like to comment on this at all? We'd be very eager to hear from you. Okay. Just one point on this one. I was just hearing Srila Prabhupada explain he was having a conversation with one devotee where they were talking about how someone couldn't understand that Krishna was the supreme, and they thought that there must be something else above him. So it was explained that some people, if one wants to understand what is the absolute truth or God on their own, that's what usually happens. If one tries to understand what is the topmost thing, the cause of all causes, what's the source of everything, just by their own endeavor and with their own mind, then they often come to this impersonal idea of the Supreme, thinking that there's something beyond Krishna, some unmanifest. Because to actually understand who is the Supreme Person, we would need to hear that from somebody who knows him. Just like if a child wants to know, okay, who is my father? Or, yeah, who's my father? They would go and they would ask their mother, and then their mother could tell them, this is your father, it's him right here. And then it's easily understood. But if they go around and ask person after person, are you my father? Are you my father? Knock on each door, then it would take a long time and they wouldn't actually get to the bottom of it. But if they hear from someone who already knows, then the answer is there and they understand, okay, this is the person who I'm coming from. But if one just tries to understand through their own speculations and with their own mind, then they might think that there's some unmanifest that's coming from Krishna, or that's above Krishna, that Krishna is coming from. But Krishna himself explains in the Bhagavad-gita to Arjuna that there's one of the statements he makes is that there's nothing superior to me. So he explains that he is the cause of all causes and everything is emanating from him. Here the word ajam meaning unborn should not be confused with the living entities who are described in the 2nd chapter as ajam. The Lord is different from the living entities who are taking birth and dying due to material attachment. The conditional souls are changing their bodies, but his body is not changeable. Even when he comes to this material world, he comes as the same unborn. Therefore, in the 4th chapter, it is said that the Lord, by his internal potency, is not under the inferior material energy, but is always in the superior energy. He was existing before the creation, and he is different from his creation. All the demigods were created within this material world, but as far as Krishna is concerned, it is said that he is not created. Therefore, Krishna is different from the great demigods like Brahma and Shiva. And because he is the creator of Brahma, Shiva, and all the other demigods, he is the supreme person of all planets. Sri Krishna is therefore different from everything that is created, and anyone who knows him as such immediately becomes liberated from all sinful reaction. One must be liberated from all sinful activities to be in the knowledge of the Supreme Lord. Only by devotional service can he be known, and not by any other means, as stated in the Bhagavad-gita. One should not try to understand Krishna as a human being, as stated previously. Only a foolish person thinks him to be a human being. This is again expressed here in a different way. A man who is not foolish, who is intelligent enough to understand the constitutional position of the Godhead, is always free from all sinful reactions. If Krishna is known as the son of Devaki, then how can he be unborn? That is also explained in Srimad Bhagavatam. When he appeared before Devaki and Vasudeva, he was not born as an ordinary child. He appeared in his original form, and then he transformed himself into an ordinary child. Anything done under the direction of Krishna is transcendental. It cannot be contaminated by the material reactions, which may be auspicious or inauspicious. The conception that there are things auspicious and inauspicious in the material world is more or less a mental concoction, because there is nothing auspicious in the material world. Everything is inauspicious because the very material mask is inauspicious. We simply imagine it to be auspicious. Real auspiciousness depends on activities in Krishna consciousness, in full devotion and service. Therefore, if we at all want our activities to be auspicious, then we should work under the directions of the Supreme Lord. Such directions are given in authoritative scriptures such as Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad-gita, or from a bona fide spiritual master. Because the spiritual master is the representative of the Supreme Lord, his direction is directly the direction of the Supreme Lord. The spiritual master, saintly persons, and scriptures direct in the same way. There's no contradiction in these three sources. All actions done under such direction are free from the reactions of pious or impious activities of this material world. The transcendental attitude of the devotee in the performance of activities is actually that of renunciation, and this is called sannyas. Anyone acting under the direction of the Supreme Lord is actually a sannyasi and a yogi, and not the man who has simply taken the dress of a sannyasi or a pseudo-yogi. So Krishna's form is spiritual. When we're talking about God or Krishna and we're saying he's a person, someone might think of a person and just as what we've experienced, something limited. We have this body, it lasts for a short time, gets diseased, gets old and withers away. But that's just the body. We understand in the beginning of Bhagavad-gita, Krishna explains to Arjuna that he's not the body, and no one on this battlefield that's taking place here in the Bhagavad-gita is their body. But everyone is an eternal spirit soul. Just like in science, it explains that all the cells in our body are changing all the time. And once several years pass, there's not a single cell that's the same in the body anymore. So throughout this lifetime, we've already changed bodies so many times. We had a baby body, and then a boy body, and then young man body, grown body. So like this, we've changed bodies already so many times. So the body keeps changing, but we see that we're the same person. So then we can naturally conclude the body will keep changing. Even when this one's no longer useful, I'll change to another body, but I'll still be here because that hasn't stopped. I've still been a person this whole time, even though I've had many different types of bodies. Had a body the size of the pea when I was in the womb. Then I had a little baby body. So I've had many different bodies, but I'm still the same person. So I'll keep being a person. So Krishna explains that to Arjuna. So when we're speaking of a person, we're not talking about just this temporary body, but actually the spirit soul, which is eternal, full of bliss and full of knowledge. Krishna explains that as Sat Chit Ananda. Ananda means that who we are as a person, as the soul, is full of bliss. So we can see that in the world, everyone's doing some activity so that they can get some happiness. Someone might pay a lot of money for anything so that it can make them happy. A movie ticket or an ice cream or a nice house or an insurance policy so that they don't have to suffer in different ways. So people try to be happy, but no one goes and takes a 4-year degree on how to be miserable or how to suffer, because it's actually our nature to be full of bliss. That's what the soul is. It's Ananda. And then the other word is Chit, which means full of knowledge. So people are always trying to gain some knowledge or know more about something. Just like if someone goes to a movie theater, they're absorbing some knowledge. If we're sitting here in class, we're gaining some knowledge. If every endeavor that somebody does, they have some knowledge that they're trying to gain from something. And then the other thing is Sat Chit Ananda. So Sat, eternal. So we're eternal living entities. And we can see that because no one wants to die. Everyone is actually very fearful of dying. People buy a nice insurance policy or take so many health supplements or have the house with a nice security system. So many things to defend ourselves because it's actually our natural position not to just stop existing, but to be eternal. So these are the qualities of the soul, Sat Chit Ananda. So when we're talking about a person, this is what it actually means. So Krishna, he's the supreme person, not a supreme temporary body, but a supreme spirit soul, whom all the other spirit souls are emanating from. And there's no difference between his body, his mind, or anything about him because he's absolute. That's the nature of something spiritual. He's absolute. So his pastimes, his name, anything about him is the same as himself. So if we want to try to take the part of Krishna and be that supreme being, because Krishna, he's the center of everything in the spiritual world, or actually just in everything in general, spiritual world, material world, he's the center of all that is. So if we become envious of the supreme person and think, okay, I want to be this supreme person, then we can come to the material world where we get the full chance to do that. So we can be in this illusion thinking that, okay, I am very much in control. I can arrange everything just how I like it and just put the people around me who glorify me and the nice, comfortable things. And in this way, I can think I'm the Lord of all that I survey. Whatever is related to me is mine. But this position is actually an illusion. So when a person uses their human form of life for the best purpose to realize who they actually are, they'll realize that this is an illusion, thinking that I'm this body, everything related to this body is mine, that there's some sort of happiness I can get from this material world, or I can make this material world my permanent, comfortable home. All these things are actually illusory, but who I really am is an eternal servant of Krishna, or an eternal servant of the Supreme Person. I'm not the Supreme Person. I'm a servant of the Supreme Person. So then what should I do? Naturally, I should engage in his service. And then I'll be back in my natural position. I'll become satisfied. Just like our hand is a part and parcel of the body. So when it works for the whole body, then it's satisfied. If it tries to eat on its own, it doesn't work, it shrivels up. But if it gives the food to the stomach or to the mouth and the stomach, then the hand's satisfied and the whole body's satisfied. So since we're a part and parcel of Krishna, if we serve him, then we're in our natural position and we benefit, and so does everything else because we're working for the whole. So Srila Prabhupada explained in the purport that there's nothing auspicious in the material world, because there's this material world is more or less a prison house. We are put into different bodies based on our desires and our karma or reactions. And then we have to carry out that sentence within that body, whether we want to be in it or not. So someone might be in a very nice body and as a demigod on a higher planet where they can enjoy much more material facility to try to enjoy their senses, just like a celebrity. Shri Gaurnitai ki jai. Some famous person, they might have more money, cars, relationships, and all these things to try to enjoy their senses more. So someone might be in a body like that, or somebody might be put into the body of like a squirrel or some other type of lower living entity, a tree. And whether they're in the body with all facility for sense gratification or the lower one, they're stuck in that position and there's not much they can do about it. But if we actually realize who we are as not this body, but an eternal spirit soul who's a part and parcel of the Supreme Soul, then we don't have to take another material body again in this material world. with all of its troubles. And we might think, there's not so many troubles. If I had $1 billion and this and that, there wouldn't be so many troubles. But no matter where we are in the material world, there's so many troubles of birth, death, disease, and old age. So no matter where we're at, those things are always there, and we'll always have to be in anxiety because it's a temporary position. Even if we're a great president or a king or a demigod presiding over many planets and many things, someone can always come and kick us out of that position. Or death ultimately will come and kick us out of that position. So the material world is full of anxieties, but the spiritual world is known as Vaikuntha, which means no anxiety. So if we serve Krishna, we come back to his spiritual abode, which is our natural home. So naturally, there's no anxiety there. And there's a nice prayer that a great devotee, Prahlad Maharaj, prays to the Lord that explains this position that we're in the material world very nicely. So this is from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 9, and the purport. The Lord has assured us in the Bhagavad-gita many times that going back to Godhead, his eternal abode, is the highest achievement. Prahlad Maharaj, while praying to Lord Nrsimha, said, "O my Lord, I am very much afraid of the materialistic way of life, and I am not the least afraid of your present ghastly, ferocious feature as Nrsimhadev. This materialistic way of life is something like a grinding stone, and we are being crushed by it. We have fallen into this horrible whirlpool of the tossing waves of life, and thus, my Lord, I pray at your lotus feet to call me back to your eternal abode as one of your servitors. This is the summit of liberation of this materialistic way of life. I have very bitter experience of the materialistic way of life. In whichever species of life I have taken birth, compelled by the force of my own activities, I have very painfully experienced two things, namely separation from my beloved and meeting with what is not wanted. And to counteract them, the remedies which I undertook were more dangerous than the disease itself. So I drift from one point to another, birth after birth, and I pray to you, therefore, to give me a shelter at your lotus feet." So Krishna is the supreme shelter. There's not anything else that we can take shelter of in the material world, because everything in the material world, I mean, what else could we take shelter of? Maybe I tried to take shelter of some healthy diet. But if one tiny little germ that we can't even see just floats into my nose, then I'm done. I get COVID or something and I'm out. Or maybe I take shelter of some big defense system, the best military on the planet, but then someone just gets a big military and that situation's over. Or I get a really nice family and friends around me, but then as soon as I'm unable to do whatever my duties were, if I become old and invalid, and then they just want to put me in an old folks home, and there goes all the family and the friends. So there's no situation in the material world that can give us shelter. But if we take shelter of the person whom everything is coming from, Krishna, then we will actually be safe. And like Prahlad Maharaj prayed, he's saying he meets with two things in the materialistic way of life, which is a separation from his beloved. So Krishna, he's our real friend, or people can have many different kinds of relationships with the Supreme Being, and he'll reciprocate with them in that way. But he's the person or the thing that's missing from everyone's life. Like in the introduction to the Krishna book, George Harrison wrote a nice introduction in there. And he starts it with, everyone is searching for Krishna. Some people don't know they are, but they are. So that's it. That's the void in our life, or the thing that's lacking. It's not anything that we can consume materially or get or buy or arrange, but it's Krishna, because we've chosen to turn away from him to try to be some imitation supreme being. But if we choose to actually be ourselves, which is an eternal servant of Krishna, and turn back to him to eternally serve him, then we'll be whole again. We won't feel This, as Prahlad is saying, his separation from his beloved, Krishna. And then the other thing he said was meeting with things that are not wanted. So we see that in life. We want something or we want to avoid some certain circumstance, but it happens. There's always some sort of frustrations. There's never the perfect plan or the perfect arrangement. Otherwise, our mind would be satisfied. But we see every day the mind has a new desire, new plan, new way of trying to enjoy the material world. But in Krishna consciousness, one can be satisfied. Because Krishna, he's the source of all pleasure, the source of all satisfaction. That's what the word Rama means. He's the reservoir of all pleasure. So by being in contact with him, everything is there. Everything's coming from him. So then we're really satisfied. There's nothing else that can satisfy anybody besides Krishna. Intelligence, knowledge, freedom from doubt and delusion, forgiveness, truthfulness, self-control and calmness, pleasure and pain, birth, death, fear, fearlessness, non-violence, equanimity, satisfaction, austerity, charity, fame, and infamy are created by me alone. Purport. The different qualities of living entities, be they good or bad, are all created by Krishna, and they are described here. Intelligence refers to the power of analyzing things in proper perspective, and knowledge refers to understanding what is spirit and what is matter. Ordinary knowledge obtained by a university education pertains only to matter, and it is not accepted here as knowledge. Knowledge means knowing the distinction between spirit and matter. In modern education, there is no knowledge about the spirit. They are simply taking care of the material elements and bodily needs. Therefore, academic knowledge is not complete. Asamoha, freedom from doubt and delusion, can be achieved when one is not hesitant and when he understands the transcendental philosophy. Slowly but surely, he becomes free from bewilderment. Nothing should be accepted blindly. Everything should be accepted with care and with caution. Shama, forgiveness should be practiced, and one should excuse the minor offenses of others. Satyam, truthfulness, means that facts should be presented as they are for the benefit of others. Facts should not be misrepresented. According to social conventions, it is said that one can speak the truth only when it is palatable to others, but that is not truthfulness. The truth should be spoken in a straight and forward way, so that others will understand actually what the facts are. If a man is a thief, and if people are warned that he is a thief, that is truth. Although sometimes the truth is unpalatable, one should not refrain from speaking it. Truthfulness demands that the facts be presented as they are for the benefit of others. That is the definition of truth. Self-control means that the senses should not be used for unnecessary personal enjoyment. There is no prohibition against meeting the proper needs of the senses, but unnecessary sense enjoyment is detrimental for spiritual advancement. Therefore, the senses should be restrained from unnecessary use. Similarly, the mind should not indulge in unnecessary thoughts. That is called shama, or calmness. Nor should one spend one's time pondering over earning money. That is a misuse of the thinking power. The mind should be used to understand the prime necessity of human beings, and that should be presented authoritatively. The power of thought should be developed in association with persons who are authorities in the scriptures, saintly persons and spiritual masters, and those whose thinking is highly developed. Sukham, pleasure or happiness, should always be in that which is favorable for the cultivation of the spiritual knowledge of Krishna consciousness. And similarly, that which is painful or which causes distress is that which is unfavorable for the cultivation of Krishna consciousness. Anything favorable for the development of Krishna consciousness should be accepted, and anything unfavorable should be rejected. Bhava, birth, should be understood to refer to the body. As far as the soul is concerned, there is neither birth nor death. That we have discussed in the beginning of Bhagavad-gita. Birth and death apply to one's embodiment in the material world. Fear is due to worrying about the future. A person in Krishna consciousness has no fear because by his activities, he is sure to go back to the spiritual sky, back home, back to Godhead. Therefore, his future is very bright. Others, however, do not know what their future holds. They have no knowledge of what the next life holds. So they are therefore in constant anxiety. If we want to get free from anxiety, then the best course is to understand Krishna and be situated always in Krishna consciousness. In that way, we will be free from all fear. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that fear is caused by our absorption in the illusory energy. But those who are free from the illusory energy, those who are confident that they are not the material body, that they are spiritual parts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and are therefore engaged in the transcendental service of the Supreme Godhead, have nothing to fear. Their future is very bright. This fear is a condition of persons who are not in Krishna consciousness. Bhayam, fearlessness, is only possible for one in Krishna consciousness. Ahimsa, non-violence, means that one should not do anything which will put others into misery or confusion. Material activities that are promised by so many politicians, sociologists, philanthropists, etc., do not produce very good results because the politicians and philanthropists have no transcendental vision. They do not know what is actually beneficial for human society. Ahimsa means that people should be trained in such a way that the full utilization of the human body can be achieved. The human body is meant for spiritual realization. So any movement or any commissions which do not further that end commit violence on the human body. That which furthers the spiritual happiness of the people in general is called non-violence. This point is often made how we can see in the material world, all of the animals are doing just four things. They're eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. So in this human form of life, if we are only focused on doing the same things, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, but maybe just in a more luxuriously packaged way, then we've wasted our human form of life because we didn't do anything different than a squirrel or a camel or a donkey. But in the human form of life, we can actually use it to inquire beyond this material world. Like, who am I? What is the soul? What is my purpose? What is this life actually meant for? Who is this? Who is God? And in this way, we can actually perfect our human life by coming to our eternal constitutional position in rendering service to the Supreme Person. Samatha, equanimity, refers to freedom from attachment and aversion. To be very much attached or to be very much detached is not the best. This material world should be accepted without attachment or aversion. Similarly, that which is favorable for prosecuting Krishna consciousness should be accepted. That which is unfavorable should be rejected. That is called samatha, equanimity. A person in Krishna consciousness has nothing to reject and nothing to accept unless it is useful in the prosecution of Krishna consciousness. Tushti, satisfaction, means that one should not be eager to gather more and more material goods by unnecessary activity. One should be satisfied with whatever is obtained by the grace of the Supreme Lord. That is called satisfaction. Tapas means austerity or penance. There are many rules and definitions in the Vedas which apply here, like rising early in the morning and taking a bath. Sometimes it is very troublesome to rise early in the morning, but whatever voluntary trouble one may suffer in this way is called penance. Similarly, there are prescriptions for fasting on certain days of the month. One may not be inclined to practice such fasting, but because of his determination to make advancement in the science of Krishna consciousness, he should accept such bodily troubles which are recommended. However, one should not fast unnecessarily or against Vedic injunctions. One should not fast for some political purpose. That is described in the Bhagavad-gita as fasting in ignorance, and anything done in ignorance or passion does not lead to spiritual advancement. Everything done in the mode of goodness does advance one. However, and fasting done in terms of the Vedic injunctions enriches one in spiritual knowledge. So this point here that one should not fast for some political purpose, that brings to mind Mahatma Gandhi, who would do some fasts for some political purposes. And I was just hearing today, Prabhupada was explaining how everyone in this world, we're always serving. It's the natural function of a living being. We're always serving. But he narrowed it down to what are we serving in the materialistic way of life, is that we're just serving our senses and that's it. So it might look like people are serving something else, and it might bring a question to mind, well, wait a second, I could serve many different things, or people might be serving many different things. But he narrowed it down because he was explaining that, like, even if someone is in a relationship, he said they might serve their wife, but why are they serving the wife? Because she will provide that person some sense gratification, and then again, is just serving the senses. Or for another example, somebody might serve their nation, and then by serving that nation, naturally they'll get much praise, they'll get much money, security, and these things. And again, it's just serving either their senses or an extended their senses. I'll serve my wife, I'll serve my family, I'll serve my nation. But again, it's the same thing of just sense gratification. So Prabhupada made the point how, what does this material service actually bring us? He was explaining how Mahatma Gandhi, he gave his whole life to serve his nation, and then one of his national members, they killed him. So they didn't think, oh, well, he's done so much service for my people, so even though I don't agree with him, let me just let it slide. But no, even though he's his own national member, he still killed him. So this, we see the material service doesn't bring us any real benefit or any lasting benefit. But if we serve Krishna, who's the eternal supreme person, then you get an eternal benefit, which is reconnecting with the supreme being, our real well-wisher. As far as charity is concerned, one should give 50% of his earnings to some good cause. And what is a good cause? It is that which is conducted in terms of Krishna consciousness. That is not only a good cause, but it is the best cause. Because Krishna is good, his cause is also good. Thus, charity should be given to a person who is engaged in Krishna consciousness. According to Vedic literature, it is enjoined that charity should be given to the Brahmanas. This practice is still followed, although not very nicely in terms of the Vedic injunction. But still, the injunction is that charity should be given to the Brahmanas. Why? Because they are engaged in higher cultivation of spiritual knowledge. A Brahmana is supposed to devote his whole life to understanding Brahman. A Brahmana, a Brahmagyana is one who knows Brahman. He is called a Brahmana. Thus, charity is offered to the Brahmanas because, since they are always engaged in higher spiritual service, they have no time to earn their livelihood. In the Vedic literature, charity is also to be awarded to the renouncer of life, the sannyasi. The sannyasis beg from door to door, not for money, but for missionary purposes. The system is that they go from door to door to awaken the householders from the slumber of ignorance. Because the householders are engaged in family affairs and have forgotten their actual purpose in life, awakening their Krishna consciousness, it is the business of these sannyasis to go as beggars to the householders and encourage them to be Krishna conscious. As it is said in the Vedas, one should awake and achieve what is due him in this human form of life. I was hearing this point in all the different holy places. Many sinful people will go there just to offload their sins, which accumulate subtly in this holy place. But the saintly persons go there and in this way eradicate all of they purify even the holy places. So in the same way, when saintly persons are going to the houses of materialistic people, they're purifying that getting rid of all of the sins accumulated in that environment. So they're not doing it for some personal benefit or to take advantage of some situation, but for the benefit of the people living there, to purify the whole place. And Prabhupada makes this point here that in the Vedas, when it is said, one should awake and achieve what is due him in this human form of life. And there's a nice analogy given, I remember it being spoken in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where it's explaining that a man is told by some astrologer that actually you have no reason to be lamenting, because your father is actually a very wealthy man and he left an extreme amount of wealth for you. You just have to go search it out. And it's kind of an intricate analogy. There's more details to it of how to get the wealth and everything. But that it's a comparison to our situation in this material world and in this human form of life. So actually we have the wealthiest father that anyone could have, and that's Krishna. He's the owner of everything that exists. So we can actually search out that wealth, our relationship with Krishna, by engaging in his service. The main service being chanting his holy name. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And acting for Krishna, remembering Krishna, worshiping his form as the deity, speaking about Krishna to others, sharing Krishna consciousness in the form of these books. So in so many ways we can serve Krishna and reawaken our dormant spiritual nature, our Krishna consciousness. So are there any questions on these points or what we've read, or comments, statements? Yes, Jagannath Prabhu.
I just wanted to make a quick comment on what you said about I liked what you were saying about how Mahatma Gandhi got assassinated by one of his own members. And to make a connection to this point, I thought it was nice. Well, not nice, but to make a connection to this point, there's another what's it called? Philanthropist or altruist, somebody who wanted to help people. And he also got murdered by his own organization. He left the organization, but he got murdered by the people who he thought was his family. So it just goes to, I just wanted to make that connection because I thought it was interesting. You know, it's happened so many times, you know, when it's not just, of course it's Mahatma Gandhi, but it's happened a whole bunch of times. So I thought I'd share that, and thought it was interesting.
Thank you. Yeah, this material service, we can see it's not the highest thing. If we serve Krishna, then everything can be automatically solved. Like watering the root of the tree. If we water each leaf and branch individually, the tree doesn't really get nourished. It could just shrivel up and die. But if we water the root of the tree, and Krishna being the root of all existence, then naturally everything functions properly. But if we just try to just serve this one group or just be a protector of these few people, what service can we really do? Because again, the example, some little germ comes and then you can't protect somebody anymore. Or even if you have all the money in the world and get all the nicest doctors in some situation, it's ultimately up to God how long that person is going to live. So materially, what kind of service can we render? But if we render a spiritual service, then we get right to the root of it, because we know we're not these material bodies, but we're actually the spirit soul. So the best thing would be to help other people reconnect with the Supreme Soul, Krishna. Magadari, you had a point online?
Haritosh Prabhu says, Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances. I had a question. I heard in a lecture that any devotional service performed without the instructions of senior Vaishnavas is not actually, quote, service, but it is considered to be karma. This created a confusion for me. Just because nobody instructed me to stand against Mayavad, should I not warn others against it? I know some devotees, not initiated nor seeking for it, who follow Srila Prabhupada and consider him as an authority, but at the same time consider other Mayavadis as equally situated as Prabhupada. Then how can one go about it? Is it proper to just keep quiet and, if necessary, even accept their viewpoint as to not risk them making angry against Prabhupada? Or is it one's duty to humbly represent Prabhupada's opposition to Mayavad philosophy as and when the right time and circumstances manifest?
So we can go with one of them at a time. The first question he was saying, could you remind me, if you don't mind?
Service.
Oh yeah, is doing devotional service without the instruction of some senior devotee just karmic activity? Well, we heard just in one of the last purport, Prabhupada was explaining that a devotee engages in service based on guru, sadhu, and shastra. So the guru, the spiritual master, what are they saying? What are the devotees, just like he's asking about, what are devotees saying? And then what is given in scripture? So with these three things, we can actually go about doing a service properly. So like you might read in the Bhagavad-gita, you might read part of it where it says in the purport, Prabhupada says, chant Hare Krishna, but some senior devotee didn't come to you and say, chant Hare Krishna, but it's there in the Shastra. And if you ask someone about it too, they'll confirm that it should be done. And if you speak also with a spiritual master about it, they'll also say that it should be done. So like this, it's not just that only if some devotee comes to you and tells you to do it, then it's devotional service, but it's given in the scripture and then also from the spiritual master and from devotees. And then the other thing is if someone is speaking about some Mayavadi philosophy, like that we are all one and I'm Krishna and you're Krishna and this and that, and then they're putting, Prabhupada said, there's a few quotes he gives about dealing with the Mayavadi philosophy, but the main mood of it that I'm hearing most often is that for this Mayavad philosophy, you can just kick on their face. And that doesn't mean that you actually kick the person, but you can just defeat their argument completely if you actually understand the philosophy. So that would be first, is to get some grounding in the philosophy, but you might actually know more of it than you think because there's so much in Prabhupada's books. So on very clearly and with the solid basis of the philosophy, you can just kick on them with shoes by presenting what is the proper thing. And it's very easy to do in one sense because Prabhupada gave us everything in his books. And if you use what is there, it's very clear. And this whole Mayavad philosophy, it's very vague and unclear. So even if you sometimes just ask them to explain what it is that they're talking about, they just dig themselves into a hole because it doesn't make sense. Just as a quick example, someone might say that I'm one, we're all one, so therefore we're all God, and we're all just going to merge and this and that. And I remember I tried this out once, but I remember before trying it out, I heard someone give this example where someone's saying, I'm you, you're me, we're all one. So he was saying, then why not just ask them, okay, then I'd like my wallet back that you are keeping at the moment. And so like this, their philosophy instantly falls apart because it doesn't hold up practically. It's very vague. So anyway, the point of it is by understanding the philosophy that's given in the Bhagavad-gita, you can just very clearly present it and just smash their nonsense argument. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavad-gita ki jai.